Hello everybody, my name is Necroxis. This is kind of a silly video. I don't know, I was bored and I figured, hey, this would be interesting. All of these tier lists are, they're very popular right now, so I did one on my Twitter, I did one for the expansions overall, which I'm not going to show here, but I wanted to show, there was one I found where there's like a bunch of the Warcraft characters. And so, I just figured we'd just hang out and chat, and I would explain to you why I have them on certain tier lists. So the tiers go from D up to S, so it goes D, C, B, A, S. I'll probably show them as I'm talking about the specific tiers. Here's the overall big giant list right now that you can get. So spoilers for the rest of the video. Here it is. So I'm going to start with the lowest and go to my favorites, just because I don't want to end the video on like a negative. So we're going to start with the D list. This will probably go fast because a lot of these you will have, if you've watched my channel, you would have learned why I don't like these characters already. We're just going to go left to right in no particular order, so I'm just going to go left to right. Starting with Yrel. And like I said, like I said on my Twitter where I posted this picture, this is with the knowledge of their arcs up to the current times. And if they're dead, that's the end, but all of the information that we know thus far is included in this. And it's most interesting about Yrel, who's the first one I'm talking about, who I have on the D. And basically, if you want to measure it, S would be like my very favorite characters. A would be characters I really like a lot, but they're not my favorite. B would be kind of like, I don't really care one way or another about them, or maybe there's some things I like and some things I don't like, so they end up in B. C is characters that I dislike slightly, and D are probably my most disliked characters. So you could, if you didn't see that picture, you could probably guess some of the ones on this list. But Yrel's interesting because if we wouldn't have had the Battle for Azeroth stuff with the Magar, she'd be S. She's one of my favorites. She's like my favorite character from Warlords of Draenor. I loved everything about her character, but I really feel like they betrayed everything about her character and ruined it irredeemably. When they revealed that she basically became like light Hitler. She became like a light fascist and just wanted to forcibly recruit everyone into the light. I hate that they threw away the only Alliance character in Warlords of Draenor that we had, basically, as Alliance players, to support a Horde storyline. Like, it wasn't bad enough that they ruined Yrel, who was the only Alliance character that really stuck through the whole expansion, but they ruined it to service a Horde story, which is just, I hate it. I hate everything about it. So that's why she's on the D tier. Next we have Arthas, and this is going to be a very divisive opinion about Arthas, because I know Arthas is a beloved villain of the Warcraft franchise. But personally, I've always found him the most disappointing and cliched villain of the Warcraft franchise. I mean, he's Anakin Skywalker. He's Darth Vader. He starts out as good, gets corrupted, and becomes evil at the behest of the Emperor, who is, the Lich King. And even when he was alive and he was good, he was a spoiled brat who thought he should get whatever he wanted because he was a prince. He really wasn't even a good swordsman. Even his powers in the light were not super impressive. He just kind of got where he was because he was a prince. So he was kind of a spoiled brat who got everything he wanted, and even then still became like a huge villain. It's a lot of, for my Game of Thrones fans, a lot of the reasons I dislike Arthas are a lot of the reasons why Daenerys is my least favorite character. But yeah, so that's Arthas. I could go into like a whole video about why I don't like everything about Arthas, but suffice to say, I think he's not only all the things that I mentioned, but like I said, he's basically Anakin Skywalker. He's a character that's been done before in other media, and so it's hard for me to agree with people that call the Lich King the best villain of Warcraft, because he's a cliched stereotype that's been done in other media. The fallen hero who becomes the Dark Lord. It's a stereotype. I think the best villain in the Warcraft franchise, we'll get to the S tier, but I think there's another best villain in the Warcraft franchise, and it's not Arthas. So, I don't know. He served his function. I understand why people like him that do like him. I just really don't. So, there we go. The next two are from Battle for Azeroth, and I don't even remember the first one's name. The leader of the Blood Trolls, and Gorak Tull. They're on this list because I think their storylines are worthless. They go nowhere. They add nothing to the overall world storyline. They're dealt with, and then they're dismissed from the story, and they don't matter at all. The Blood Trolls, you could argue, matter a little bit more, because it ties into the Uldir storyline, but even the Uldir storyline goes really nowhere, because we have the ending, they kind of tease that what's-his-face is an old god, and he's not, but then they try to go back and forth on it. He's like a manufactured old god. It's just, it's such nonsense. It feels like the first tier of Battle for Azeroth was just kind of thrown in there because they couldn't think of anything. They didn't want to do Ajara right away, and they didn't want to do whatever Elfstrider is, so they invented this Gahun figure, which was just boring, in my opinion. And Gorak Tull is even worse. I think the entire Drustvar storyline, if you've watched my review of Battle for Azeroth at any point on this channel, Drustvar is my least favorite zone. I think it's one of the best looking zones, but in terms of what it adds to the expansion, in terms of the story and characters, it's probably like one of my least favorite zones in the entire game. All of the expansions. Because not only is Gorak Tull and the Drust it doesn't really go anywhere, and then they make the distinction that the Drust and their Death Plane isn't the Shadowlands, but then they still want to have their cake and eat it too and say, maybe it is the Shadowlands, but it's different enough that it's not technically what we know as the... it's so vague that they don't explain it, and it's just... It goes nowhere, and you deal with it in one zone, and then it's done. It does come back up in the Jaina quest chain, but then when that's finished, it's never brought up again. So I don't... Not only besides the fact that all of those problems I just listed, but the Drust with the Witches and Gorak Tull is like a beat-for-beat repeat of the Wrath of the Lich King storyline with the Lich King and the Scourge and the Vrykul. You just replace the Witches with the Vrykul, and then you replace Gorak Tull with the Scourge. And it's like literally the exact same storyline. So it's boring. I don't like either of those characters, either of those zones. It's just not fun for me. I just don't like it personally. Next we have Bran. And the only problem that I have with Bran and why he's on the D tier is because all of his appearances are like a joke. And even when they're dealing with serious topics like Ulduar or, any of the other old god stuff, Bran's always there as like he's almost like he's like Harrison Jones, but they also have Harrison Jones. So it's like they have two goofy explorer characters that are just copies of Indiana Jones, and I don't know. Joke characters are always like on the lowest tier of my list, so he's just not entertaining to me. I think his two brothers are far more interesting. And it's just, I don't think he adds anything to the storyline. So, and if that's the worst thing I can say about a character in a narrative is you don't add anything to the storyline, so why are you even here? So, next, I believe this is supposed to be Brol Bearmantle, or Bearmantle. I always call it Beer and people call me out on it. Brol Bearmantle. And he's on here because he, again, really doesn't serve a purpose. And he was part of the very horrible Varian Wrynn comic. Interestingly, Valeera was also part of that comic, but I think Valeera has transcended her I'm a horrible comic character status and has become kind of an interesting character in the rest of the story, whereas Brol really hasn't. I mean, he's been in the game several times, but he really he's kind of just like discount Malfurion. And it's like he's used... I always feel like he's used when they don't want to pay Malfurion's voice actor, so they're just like, let's just throw Brol in there, because he's also a druid, so he could work. Next is Cinereous. I believe this is supposed to be Cinereous and not his son, so I'm just going to say it's Cinereous. Cinereous is boring to me because, mainly in Battle for Azeroth, he wasn't there. Again, this is where we go back to, I'm taking into account the storyline of the current expansion. Cinereous and all the Ancients just didn't show up for the Night Elves when their homes got destroyed. Their whole lands got genocided and just taken over wholesale by the Horde, and Cinereous and all the Ancients are just not there. They had better things to do, I guess, even though the Nightmare's basically taken care of at this point. They were fucked off in the Emerald Dream doing whatever they were doing, so it's the Night Elves have been done so dirty with Battle for Azeroth, and I hate that Cinereous wasn't there. Like, especially from all the Ancients. There are some Ancients where I'm like, okay, maybe they weren't stalwart allies of the Night Elves, like, like Aviana or, Acina or something like that, but Cinereous taught Malfurion. Like, he should be there. Like, he should have defended the Night Elf zones, or at least showed up and explained what he was doing so that he couldn't defend the Night Elf zones. So, D tier. Get out of here, Cinereous. You're worthless. Like, you deserve the death that the Horde should have given you a second time. Next, we have Helia. And the reason Helia's on this list is because I think that her story should have ended when she died. And as I've said a bunch of times at this point, characters permanently dying is important to a narrative, because if every character can come back to life, death stops being important. And the way that they bring Helia back is through like a side quest from an island expedition drop, and then they wag in your finger like, you didn't think Helia really was dead, did you? And it's like, what? You don't give any further explanation of how she's alive still. Like, what? How did she survive being killed by the raid? Like, Odin is free. Like, the curse she put on to trap him in the Halls of Valor doesn't work anymore. If she's alive, did she ever actually die? Did she get revived? Was she faking her death? Like, what happened? And if she didn't actually die at any point, how did Odin get freed? Like, it's a storyline they wrote after the fact, after they've already killed off this character, and because Blizzard can never, ever kill off characters. There is so very few amount of characters that they permanently kill off, because they want to use it again, because it can be used for a dungeon, or a raid, or a new expansion concept. Even if the storyline makes no sense. Like Illidan, which we'll get to right after this. But it's just Helia. She was kind of boring to begin with. And then she became like an interesting B-villain in the Legion plot. I mean, her story really didn't make any sense, what she was doing, why she was doing it, at the time she was doing it, especially when the demonic apocalypse was occurring. But whatever. But then she gets killed, and then she's brought back, and then nothing is done with that. So I think it's clear they're bringing back all these characters for like a death expansion. It's obvious. I mean, everyone who's paying any amount of attention to the story can see that's what's coming. But it doesn't excuse the fact that, we're going to do a death expansion, so therefore a death-based character should just come back to life magically, because death magic. It's like, you have to explain the rules. Like, if there's rules in your universe, you have to explain why the rules are being broken for characters, and I just don't... Helia sucks. I don't like her. She should have stayed dead. She's just boring, and she's going to be used as like a dungeon or a raid boss in the death expansion. Guarantee you. Mark my words. Next we have Illidan. I've talked about Illidan a lot before and why I don't like him. They brought him back purely out of fan service. They brought him back also because they completely ruined him in Burning Crusade. I was just having a conversation with someone on Twitter as to why I put Burning Crusade so down on my expansion list, and it's because they ruined 3 interesting characters. Burning Crusade ruined Kael'thas, Illidan, and Lady Vashj. And they did so in the most ridiculous way. Kael'thas became like a mustache-twirling, insane villain whose descent into villainy we never saw and we're never going to see, because the short story was supposed to be written by somebody who doesn't even work at Blizzard anymore to explain that. Lady Vashj turned into like a Captain Planet-esque villain with a nonsense plan to drain all the waters out of Zangarmarsh to be evil, I guess? And Illidan was a character who never was evil, but he did morally questionable things for the greater good. And then in Burning Crusade, like, I never really liked Illidan as a character in the RTS. Like, I was like, if this was RTS Illidan, he'd be on the B tier, because I don't really care that much one way or another about him. But in Burning Crusade, they made him just evil, just to be evil, because he was a recognizable RTS villain, and they were like, we can sell the first expansion by saying the final boss is that guy you remember from Warcraft 3, and even then it wasn't, because they threw in Kil Jaeden at the end. So there's so many problems with Illidan. He's the main crux behind the Legion expansion. He's basically like the Mary Sue of Legion, and there's so much wrong with Legion's storyline that I don't want to repeat here. but Illidan's at like the center focus of it. Everything about the prophecy about him, and they just. And the reason I know that they didn't plan on the Legion Illidan being the actual Illidan is because they had this Burning Crusade bastardization of him. But then when Legion came out, they had to like quickly retcon like all of the, oh, he wasn't just evil and outland for no reason. He actually had a plan all along. You just never knew about it. Because we never invited it till just now, so we could explain why he wasn't actually a villain. So it's, he's not a great, he's a detriment to the story, I think. So next we have Sylvanas and the Thanos. That I'm going to have to explain. So everyone knows I hate Sylvanas for the almost exact same reasons as Illidan. She's a character who should have died a long time ago and is just being kept around through fan service and because of fan service. And I believe Sylvanas Windrunner is the #1 character that is actively ruining the World of Warcraft storyline right now more than anything else in the entire production of this game. Like the fact she's being kept around and the fact that storylines are happening and people aren't turning against her or they're taking so long to turn against her, or she's doing what she's able to do without being stopped, or she has this like almost omniscient knowledge of everything because she's just like a spy master. She's such, if a character has more plot armor than Anduin, then you're bad. And Sylvanas has some of the most stringently thick, strong plot armor more than any other character in this storyline, in this entire franchise. And it's just, I hate it. I hate her as a character. I hate what she brings to the story. I hate how they bastardized a Frozen Throne character in Up Through Wrath, who I thought was pretty interesting, and I kind of liked. Contrary to popular belief. So it's, I don't know, man. And the Thanos is basically just her lapdog, so it's, I mean, I can't imagine why any Horde character would like Thanos constantly insulting them and saying how much a big piece of shit they are from him, and why he's such an edgelord about them, and it's just, what an obnoxious character to have to be forced to interact with for an entire expansion. That's just my feelings on it. So, that's the D tier. The C tier, for some of the same reasons as the D tier, we have Agra. I think Agra is, I don't hate her. I find her mildly annoying because Thrall is one of the most humanized characters in the story as an orc of all characters, of all races. And Agra, I think, was just introduced both to kind of write Thrall out of the story and also like humanize him more, which wasn't even needed. And writing Thrall, like, I used to dislike Thrall quite a bit because he was Metzin's self-insert, let's be honest. He was a Mary Sue and Metzin's self-insert. But now that he's out of the story, primarily because Agra showed up and they had kids, like, he's not participating in things that he should as a character, like that they've built up since Warcraft 3 until now. Stuff that he should be around for, like Legion. Like, he should have been around in Legion more than just, I show up for the enhancement introduction and then I leave and I'm done. And like the war right now, it takes until 8.2 before Thrall even shows up. And he shows up for like the smallest event and then he's gone again. Or at least he doesn't do anything else in 8.2. So that's kind of why I dislike Agra, because what she's done to another character. Archimonde, I kind of dislike because he's never been interesting. He's definitely the least interesting of the Eridar trio, of Archimonde, Kil Jaeden, and Velen. And he doesn't really bring anything to the forefront. He's just kind of a generic, I'm a powerful magic user, haha, and that's basically it. So, he's disappointing more than anything, I think. So that's why he's on C tier. Lady Ash Feign is a character I would have put on A, but then after Blizzard kind of just ruins her in 8.2 with what happens to her, she's on a C tier. And I'm not going to spoil too much more about 8.2 in this video, but I really dislike her character's arc's conclusion, or continuation, I guess, in 8.2. I hate it. I think it's stupid. I think it ruins what is a fascinating character. Next we have Bolvar Lich King, and I think he's just a discount original Lich King. And I don't like the original Lich King, so there we go. I think they took an interesting character in Bolvar and they kind of ruined him. and made him like this evil. Like, he went from like this noble sacrifice to I'm so good and noble, I should be the Lich King because I can hold off the corruptive influence, to Legion shows up and it's nope, he's just evil. Okay, I guess we're just gonna have to deal with Bolvar Lich King when we do the Wrath of the Lich King in the next 9.0 10.0 expansion. So that's it. Bwonsamdi is a character I think should have died in 8.1. I think Bwonsamdi would have been a really cool finale, or at least mid-tier end boss for the middle of Battle of Dazar'alor. I think it's very nonsensical why Talanji is still willing to follow Bwonsamdi after he laughs in her face and basically tells her, like, hey, I fucked your dad over, so haha, now I'm fucking you over too, deal with it, bitch. Like, I can't believe he hasn't been dealt with yet at this point. And it's just, that's kind of my problems with Bwonsamdi. Next we have Cromie. Time traveling stuff is bad, and Warcraft does it in a bad way. So that's it. And I think Chromie's kind of annoying. I think she's cutesy, but they've overused her. She's oversaturated. And a lot of her more recent stuff doesn't make any sense, like the Deaths of Cromie scenario is completely out of left field and doesn't connect to anything yet, and it just seems nonsensical. So there we go. Chen is next. I believe this is supposed to be Chen. And I don't hate Chen. I really don't even dislike Chen. It's more that he's misused because he hasn't really shown up again. Like, he showed up in Legion as a follower, but Mists of Pandaria is my favorite expansion, and they kind of really misused what the potential that was there in Legion when you return there. And they kind of had made Pandaren into the stereotype that Legion... They made Pandaren into the brew like, we only are involving brew and we drink a lot because we're Pandaren. Like, they made them into that in Legion, when Mists of Pandaria did such a good job breaking that stereotype with characters like Chen in Mists of Pandaria, and like Terran Zu and Yalia, and like all of the cast of characters in Mists of Pandaria who break that trope. And then Chen is just back here like, I'm gonna have some brew. I'm a brew master. And it's like, well, cool, thanks Chen. Thanks for helping out. Deathwing is next, and it's mostly because he was disappointing in Cataclysm. It's hard. I don't really know how you do a villain like Deathwing well. He's kind of just like an unstoppable evil force. I'm hesitant to say maybe they could have redeemed him, but he was so far gone. It's just, he seemed like another Illidan in the fact that they were like, hey, it's Cataclysm, it's Deathwing, remember him from Warcraft 2? He's the bad guy this time. Even though he wasn't, he was like a puppet of the old gods, so it's... it wasn't super satisfying that he was the final boss, to be honest. It's hard to be invested in the demise of the villain when the whole time you know that the villain is just a stooge for greater villains the entire time. So it's, I don't know. Next we have Draka. Draka's boring. And that's it. That's Draka. Khadgar. I dislike Khadgar because he doesn't show up in Battle for Azeroth. He basically says, you know, even though the Horde's the one that genocided a bunch of people, and even though I, as Khadgar, am the one who voted in the tie-breaking in favor of defending Theramore against the Horde and Mists of Pandaria, for some reason this time I'm just going to stay out of it, even though the war is destroying the planet. I'm just going to go in Dalaran and jerk off, or whatever I'm doing by myself. It's like, Khadgar, you just spent 2 expansions like caring about trying to save the planet, and then you have a faction in the Horde that starts another world war while everything else is going down and the planet's dying in the process, and you're just gone because you don't want to take sides. If I was Jaina, I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you're such an asshole. You tried to help save Theramore, but then you just leave the Night Elves, you don't even like offer to help? It's the exact same situation too. An invading Horde force is going to kill a lot of civilians, so the Kirin-Tor vote in favor of defending it in Mists of Pandaria. The literal exact same thing happens in Battle for Azeroth. And Khadgar, like, they don't even get to the point where Khadgar says, no, I'm not going to do it. He just says, I'm staying out of it, bye, in the introduction. It's like, dude, you're an asshole. Next week we have Crassus, or Coralstraz. This was Knack's self-insert character, or his favorite character. And I guess Ronan also was his insert. But Crassus and Ronan were both Knack introductions, and they both were pretty shit. And I like that Christy Golden got to kill both of them off. I just kind of found them annoying. Ronan much more so, because Ronan had ridiculous powers. Like, he could summon raptor armies and stuff, and it's yikes. So, that's the D and C tiers. We're going to get to the B tiers. We're going to blow through a lot of these very fast, because this is the biggest tier, if you could see. Aegwynn really loved her. I hate how Chronicle retconned her backstory. And you can go watch my Chronicle video if you want to know more. Ysera, cool character, but never the most interesting dragon aspect, and now she's dead. Yes, her death was sad, probably one of the saddest moments in all of Warcraft, but you have to... Most of the aspects are not super interesting to me. I think they function well as like a background plot device, but they themselves as characters are not super interesting. As you can see, Alexstrasza is next. Not super interesting to me. So it's hard for me to care about it. So next we have Illyria. I never super cared about Illyria either way. I don't really have much more to say about Illyria. I never super cared about her. I thought she was one of the least interesting parts of Warcraft 2, and one of the least interesting elf characters in general. So, I don't know. Cairn. Cairn's cool, but Cairn's boring. So that's Cairn. There we go. Cho'Gall. Interesting villain who was never given the chance to become like a Gul'dan tier villain, and then was killed off. And in Warlords of Draenor, I hate that they killed him off in the mythic version of the Imperator Margok fight. Like, you didn't even get to see it unless you did it in mythic. Sucks. Next is Durotan. I don't dislike Durotan at all, but he's not super interesting to me. Mostly because Durotan is basically Thrall, and we had so much more screen time with Thrall than Durotan. Even if Lord of the Clans, even if technically Durotan existed in our world as like on Earth as like a narrative property before Thrall, Thrall had so much more screen time, and they're basically the same character, that Durotan's kind of boring. I don't dislike him, but it's like, oh well, we have Durotan, but we also have Thrall, has so much more story focus, and it's the same character. So that's kind of why I'm like, on him. Falstad, not used enough for me to super care about him. Grom, tragic backstory, but I hate what happened with him in Warlords of Draenor. So that's why he's on B instead of like an A tier. I believe it's supposed to be Helderon Brightwing is the next one? No. Who is this? This is Alaric Starchase? This is the dude, I don't even remember who his name is off the top of my head. I know who he is, but I guess that's why he's here, because he's boring. Yogg-Saron, this was supposed to be Cthulhu. I have Cthulhu on the A tier, and for some reason when I was doing this, my brain, I don't know why, flipped Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron, their pictures. This is supposed to be Cthulhu. Cthulhu's not... He's probably the least interesting of all the old gods, so that's why he's on this tier list, where he is. So, yeah. Kael'thas, super interesting, ruined completely by Burning Crusade. Kalecgos, again, an aspect, kind of boring, not super interesting. Also, his comic was pretty shit. Matthias Shaw, a cool character who I don't have much else to say about. That's basically it. Magni, I like that he's alive still, and his comic is great, but I think it's so obvious to everybody else paying attention to the story that Magni is clearly helping N'Zoth inadvertently, and the fact that nobody has even mentioned this yet in canon annoys me. So that's why he's on this list. Then we have Y'Siraj, dead before... Oh, no, this is N'Zoth. I've really lost my care for the old gods with the canon, with the Chronicles retcon of them, by not making them a big bad. They didn't have to be the big bad. Like, I didn't think they had to be stronger than the Legion, but the fact that they're just stooges of the Void Lords is disappointing to me. And so, the only interesting old god I think is Yogg-Saron because of what he has accomplished. And I guess you can say N'Zoth is responsible for, Deathwing, and part of the Emerald Nightmare, although they kind of retconned that to Yogg-Saron a lot. It's just, I don't know. I can't tell if this is supposed to be, off the top of my head, N'Zoth or Y'Saraj. They're basically the same in regards to my commentary about them. So there we go. King Rastakhan. An interesting character who is so stupid that he destroyed his entire homeland, basically, because he's ignorant. Because he's an idiot. And I never super cared about Rastakhan. Talanji is way more interesting to me. Sargeras, we never learned enough about Sargeras to make me super care about him. And that's basically it. Same for Ragnaros. Ragnaros was just kind of unambiguously evil. Next we have Rexxar. I quite like Rexxar, actually. But the problem is Battle for Azeroth mischaracterizes him so badly that he probably went from like an A to a B for me. And there's so many moments in Battle for Azeroth where I'm like, Rexxar, your whole character built up to not just towing the line for the Horde, and now you're just towing the line for the Horde. To so much so that you left the Horde for the exact same thing that Sylvanas did. You left because Grom wanted to do a thing that Sylvanas actually did, and you're still around and defending it. It's like, holy shit. Like, who wrote Rexxar in Battle for Azeroth? Get him out of here. Next we have Odin. Odin's interesting, but I like that he's kind of a douchebag. Wait, is this Odin? Yeah, it's Odin. I like that he's kind of a douche, but everything with the Vrykul and Legion bothered me, because it didn't go anywhere. Like, Odin had so much previous connection to, like, being a keeper and wanting to help defend Azeroth, but, like, 95% of his story is contained in one zone, and he never really goes anywhere in Legion. Like, he should have been, like, if they were going to have, like, one Titan Keeper to be like, we're helping in Legion fight off the Burning Legion, it should have been Odin, and he's not really. Like, he wants us to win, I guess, over Skovald, trying to get the Aegis, but it was more from, like, let's watch this competition, because I'm a Greek insert, so haha, I love competition! And that's Odin. It's like, I wish he would have did more. Next we have Malygos, another aspect. Meh. Medivh is kind of like a discount Gul'dan, so I don't find him nearly as interesting as Gul'dan, who is one of my favorites. Muradin, not super interesting. Like, he's probably while I dislike Bran the most, I think Magni might be the least, or Muradin might be the least interesting of the three. So, next we have Ronan. I already explained Ronan. And then we have Romath. I think Romath's interesting, but he's underutilized, which is why he's a B and not an A. Next we have, is this supposed to be Rokon? I think it's Rokon. Rokon is interesting, but he's not developed enough beyond I'm just a generic Dark Spirit troll. Even in being like a main character of the Horde faction in Battle for Azeroth, he really doesn't get character growth, or even like we don't see his backstory. We get more of him from the RTS in terms of character development than we actually do in World of Warcraft, which is disappointing. Thrall. I've talked about Thrall in this video and before. I used to really hate Thrall, but he's moved up on this list by being absent, even though I don't think he should have been absent. So there's Thrall. Zul'jin, kind of a C or D list villain that I don't know. There's nothing really there for me to like latch onto as a villain. Uther, generic paladin who dies. Sorry, I mean he's not uninteresting, but he's not interesting. So he's just kind of there, and he died, and he's still kind of. They still kind of have like the spirit of Uther around in the backstory. Eventually, going to probably do something at some point. But so there we go. Vol'jin, underutilized. He might move up to an A depending on what they do with him at the end of Battle for Azeroth. If he becomes a Loa, go up to A, because I think that would be pretty cool. Varisa, least interesting of the Windrunner sisters. Basically was Illyria when Knack wanted to have Illyria, but Illyria was still absent, so Varisa showed up, and here she is. So next we have Valeera Sanguinar. She managed to escape her horribleness of her comic, like I explained, but she has been underutilized as well. That's the big theme of the beat here. Characters who could be great, but really aren't utilized to their full potential. So that's him. The last one, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be Mograine, or like one of the Mograines, or Tyrion. But the same either way. They're not super. The Mograine stuff was kind of like a huge clusterfuck story-wise until they finally managed to eke out a kind of sensical canon in Wrath of the Lich King. But it never was super enthralling to me. Like a Fallen Paladin is literally, Arthas' storyline, so it's I don't know. And Tyrion went out really stupidly in Legion. I think they killed him just to be like, see, the Legion's bad, guys. They killed the best paladin left around. Bye. So he deserved to have a better death than what he got. So, A-list. Start out with Athas Sunstrider. Athas is very interesting because he drives a lot of conflict in the plot by existing. You might have heard me mock Athas Sunreaver before. Did I say Sunstrider? I meant Sunreaver. Sunstrider, Sunreaver, fucking Blood Elves, get your shit together with your names. Athas introduces a lot of conflict in the plot with Jaina and the Kirin Tor, and I think that's super interesting. And I like the idea that he's kind of like a coward who is not owning up to the shit that he did wrong because he doesn't want to get punished for it. That's a realistic character trait. There are people in this world who do bad things or allow bad things to happen, and they don't say anything or stop because it might negatively come back on them, and they don't want to deal with it. So, that's interesting to me, and I think Athas is an interesting secondary character. Akama is super cool. He's just kind of like a badass, and sometimes there are characters you think are just, hey, this character's a badass, and they have like a righteous mission. And they're kind of cool. Also, in Warlords, he was a cool character to see at his Draenei form. So, Akama. Next, we have Bane. Bane is basically his father, but he's actually more proactive than Karen is. He's more proactive than Karen is, in so much that Karen did almost nothing until he died right away. Or until he did one thing and then he died. But Bane did almost nothing, but he's not dead yet, so he has the potential to be great. I don't know if they're going to make him the war chief or not, but him standing up to Sylvanas and finally doing something in 8.2, great job, Bane. Next we have Yogg-Saron. It says Cthulhu on here, but like I explained, it's supposed to be Yogg-Saron. The most interesting old god who they gave the most credit to, so I have to like him the most. He did the most amounts of things. He almost destroyed the entire planet with corrupting the world trees through the Emerald Nightmare, which is cool. He probably got the closest from... We don't really know the extent of Ysaraj's success or failure to corrupt the world soul, but Yogg-Saron probably got the closest of all that we know so far. So that's why he's on this list. Next we have Ellison. Super cool. Great voice actor. I love that she manipulates... I dislike time travel in a story, but I like that she can, freeze time, manipulate time. It's a great way to use time without doing the cliched, Ellison went back into the past to kill Hitler as a baby and stop it all. Like, they didn't go through that route with her. They kind of just made her, like, a very powerful, like, chronomancer, basically, which is pretty cool. I like that. I was hoping when 7.1 was getting data mined, it didn't seem like she was going to die. It kind of seemed like you kill her and then she goes back in the past and then she realizes, oh, we can fight the Legion. We don't have to be on their side. And, like, yeah, she survives. Like, not that she would be the leader still, because I think Thalysra should have still been the leader, like she is now. But that she steps down and, like, he still uses her considerable amount of magical power to help us, like, going forward. Next we have Gallywix. Gallywix is great because everyone hates him and he was developed to be a douchebag that should be hated. And sometimes there are characters you just like to hate. And not in a characters you hate to hate, or characters that you just hate, like Sylvanas in my regard. But a character who is developed to be like this greasy, weaselly little snot that you want to punch in the face. Like, and then Gallywix adds that to the story, and I like it. Gazlowe, I wish was on this list because I legitimately like Gazlowe for kind of breaking the goblin stereotype. But you know, Gallywix is cool. Garona, super interesting backstory, even if it's kind of weird, even if it's kind of very anime-ish with her parentage. But super interesting backstory, huge badass. I'm a little bummed out she's not doing what needs to be done in Battle for Azeroth, and it's just like Team Horde, as if Sylvanas could like threaten Garona Halfworkin, who is assassin of kings and one of the best like rogues and spy masters in the whole franchise. Like, Sylvanas could somehow do something or hold over her something that would make her be a loyal Horde soldier is ridiculous. But everything else besides Battle for Azeroth Garona is cool. Garrosh, very much like Athos, although he has a bigger role. And kind of like Gallywix, a character you love to hate, introduce a lot of interesting conflict into the storyline, and was just kind of cool. A kind of cool villain. He was a little spoiled shit. In a lot of ways, he mirrors Arthas. In a warped sense of view. He didn't get everything he wanted because he was the child of an important person. It's kind of like an inverted view of it, which I guess would make him a good character. I guess that's not a good comparison, but Garrosh was interesting because he was kind of like a spoiled brat who, once he learned what his father actually did, I guess he became an Arthas-like figure once he learned that his father kind of saved the orcs from the corruption. And then, just like Arthas, it kind of led him to ruin because he became like a pompous douchebag. Gen's cool. I don't really have much to say about Gen. I like his character transformation from Warcraft 2 until now. I like that he's loyal to Anduin to a fault. Like a good dog. Like a good old doggy. And I like when he unleashes his Worgen form and just goes to town and kills somebody or fights somebody. Like when he fights Nathanos, or like when he beats the shit out of Sylvanas and like just punches her in the face in the Legion cinematic. It's great. Kil Jaeden. Kil Jaeden could have been an S tier character if they would have more explored his regret that they introduced at the very end, right before he died. They introduced this regret idea of him regretting joining the Burning Legion in 7.2 in the cinematic. And I wanted to see more of that explored further. And his death cinematic is great, and it kind of adds on to that a little bit. I like that he kind of was like an impatient, like childish kind of, like, I'm done trying to wait, I'm gonna go and fight! And it kind of, I like how his own hubris leads to his downfall. I love that in villains, which is why I love that's why I think Gul'dan's ultimate fate in our universe is perfect. Villains who end up causing their own demise because of their own like pomposity or their own arrogance or their own lack of self-awareness. Like, hey, I'm gonna fail, I shouldn't do this. Like, I love that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like why I like Kil Jaeden more than Archimonde. Lady Liadrin, just a super cool badass blood elf character. Like, I'm kind of bummed out about how she kind of lies about Tyrande and the Night Elves in the Nightborn intro, but you know, I guess if one thing is for sure, the Nightborn intro showed us that all of the... like, if there wasn't a question before, all the races of elves are a bunch of pompous pricks who lie about themselves and think that they're the greatest of all the other elves. So, great. Malfurion, I wasn't a huge fan until 7.8.1, when he goes to town and actually does something to defend the Night Elves instead of kind of just standing around letting Tyrande do everything. So there we go. Xavius, a cool villain that was misused. I like the idea of the Nightmare and Xavius, but it was kind of misused, so he's not an S-tier character. Turalyon. I like him a little bit more than just average, so that's why he's here. Naz Dormu, the only aspect on this list that's not in the B tier, because I like the idea of the infinite dragonflight. I hate the execution of it, but I like the idea of it, so that's why he's here. Ner'zhul. Ner'zhul as an orc is super interesting. I love how he undermines the Burning Legion when he's kind of like their prisoner still, but they kind of trot him out as like a spiritual leader, even though he has no choice when Gul'dan has supplanted him. But I like that he subtly undermines the Burning Legion's efforts, and I like his descent into villainy. I think it's very interesting, and yeah, like I could make whole videos on a lot of these characters, so I'm kind of just giving you the cliff notes. I think this is supposed to be Lorna Crowley next, and I just love characters who are just like, I have no magic powers, I have no super weapon, I have no anything, but I'm a lady with a shotgun, and I know how to fight, and I'm a super badass. And that's kind of what Lorna Crowley is, and what Amber Kiernan was before she died in Legion. RIP. Another reason why Legion sucks, because it killed Amber Kiernan. Thalyssra. Great. She was going to be on a B tier until I got 8.2, when in 8.2 she's back to being the Legion Thalyssra who I liked. So, good on you, Thalyssra. Tyrande. Great. A lot of really cool new stuff. Probably would be S tier, but they didn't include her in 8.2, and it makes no sense at all. Next we have Xul, a Gul'dan level villain who was cut down before he could achieve his Gul'dan level villain status. And that's it. Like, a lot of things I like about Gul'dan, and a lot of things why I like about Xul. Velen. Just a cool character. Like, just a badass character. I mean, he's a pacifist to a fault, but even he has his limits, and in 7.3 in Argus, when Velen is like not so fast and he kills what's his face, his former student, I was like, good on you, Velen. Also, his reaction to the end of Legion was great in the cinematic. Varian, just an overall badass Alliance character, and just general all around. He became much better once they got rid of the split personality bullshit that they introduced in the Varian comic, which also features Brol and Valeera. And his death was tragic, but it was a sacrifice a king would make, and he's a great character. I love him a lot. S tier. Here we go. Gul'dan. I've already explained why I love Gul'dan in my villain video. Go ahead and watch that. Ajara. I've already explained why I like Ajara in my villain video. Go watch that. Or not my villain, my top 5 characters, not villain video. Gul'dan's in there, Ajara's in there, Anduin's in there, and there's the next one on this list. So those 3 are explained in another video. Go feel free to watch it if you want. Zakan. I think Zakan really, he embodies the Dark Spear spirit as like a people more than any of the surviving Dark Spear characters. I'd really love for him to get a lot more story focused and become a major Horde character. I could even see him becoming the leader of the Dark Spears eventually. Jaina. There's so much I could say about Jaina, why I like her, but, you know, one of the most powerful characters in the franchise. A super interesting story arc. A believable, much like Saurfang later on this list, on this tier, a believable interpretation of like PTSD done in Warcraft through Jaina. Great. Also, Jaina's not crazy, and Jaina didn't flip-flop back and forth. Anyone who says that just hasn't paid attention. Everything Jaina does and says from expansion to expansion makes sense in the context of what's happening to her and what she's doing. So I hate that people say, like, she just flip-flops back and forth, and she used to love the Horde, now hates it, then loves them again and hates them. That's not what's happening. You're just not paying attention. Catherine, best character arc in Battle for Azeroth, Catherine. Done. Kel'Thuzad, my favorite villain when I was learning to love the Warcraft franchise. I love necromancy in a fantasy setting. It's like my favorite. If I could play a necromancer in every RPG, I would play a necromancer in every RPG. It's why I made a warlock. It's why I was a necromancer main in Diablo 2. I just think it's a very fascinating kind of magic in like a fantasy narrative. And Kel'Thuzad, he has great quotes. Your curiosity will be the death of you is still one of the best quotes in the Warcraft franchise. And he's cool. Next, I'm going to assume this is supposed to be Lady Vashj. It might not be, but I think this is supposed to be Lady Vashj. And I don't know why. I just really gravitated toward her as a character in Frozen Throne. She was just very interesting. She was like the first major Naga character when they introduced the Naga as a concept in Frozen Throne. And she was the focal point of the Naga development. Like the first Naga character we got to see the backstory of, or explain why they're doing what they're doing. And she's just cool, and she was ruined so badly in Burning Crusade. But for some reason, unlike other characters who are ruined and been put lower on this list, I'm still holding out hope that somehow if they can fucking MacGuffin retcon Illidan back to life, fucking bring back Lady Vashj. Come on, you could do it. Lord Thamar, explained in my top 5 video. Go ahead and go watch that if you want. Magothic Rim Totem. My favorite kind of villains in this franchise are the manipulative, powerful ones who either have a lot of magical power or a lot of political power and know how to use it. Characters who are not like Garrosh. While Garrosh was interesting, a brute force like, I'm an evil villain because I'm strong and I have a big strong weapon and I'm going to use it to kill everyone. Like, that's a boring villain to me. And Magatha is like the complete opposite of it. Like, Magatha's what she does in The Shattering, in leading to Karen's death, Magatha Grim Totem almost destroys the Horde from within in a single act of villainy. And I just love her. I love her for all the same reasons I love Gul'dan. Maiev. Maiev is right. I have a whole video about Maiev if you want to go watch it. I think I called it Wasted Potential, but that's because I made it before Legion came out, when she returned as a major character. But Maiev not liking Tyrande and Malfurion that's the correct way to take how Tyrande and Malfurion's leadership style has been. So go watch that whole video if you want on her. Mekkatorque, the truest hero of the entire Alliance leadership. Mekkatorque has proven time and time again to put himself and his people before, or put the Alliance before himself and even his people. He knows the value of the gnomes being in the Alliance. He has created some of the best technology for the Alliance. He has sacrificed everything, including now his own life, for the Alliance. He is one of the greatest Alliance leaders, and he doesn't get nearly enough credit for what a fucking MVP he is in the Alliance. Mekkatorque is fucking amazing. He's like one of the best characters, one of the best leaders. He didn't become a leader because he's like a prince or has royalty or is rich. He's a leader because he's smart and his people voted for him. He's a democratically elected leader, even though he calls himself a king because he likes being called a king. That's fine. It's an interesting quirk. He's a little vainglorious. I love Ajar for that, so fuck it. I love Mekkatorque for it. Mekkatorque, MVP of the Alliance leadership. Talanji, one of the best arcs of a new character that they've showed. She's super powerful. She's very interesting. She's far more better a leader than her father is, and I can't wait to see what happens next with her. Talanji. Moira, a gray villainish character who became like a hero of the Alliance. And I explained a lot about why I like Moira in my comic review of Fault Lines, so go ahead and watch that if you're curious. But again, Moira she's kind of like the Magatha, but she's not a villain. She's like a non-villain. She's like a hero version of Magatha. She has political power. She knows how to politically manipulate the situations to her benefit. Chronicle especially. Go back and watch the Chronicle video where I talk about Moira and her role in taking down Deathwing or Nefarian as well as the orcs inhabiting Blackrock Spire. Moira is the key character who leads that charge from behind the scenes. Saurfang, the war chief we don't deserve, the best interpretation of like a PTSD storyline, one of the greatest arcs of any single character out, maybe him and Jaina, like the best arcs in the entire franchise. I just love everything about Saurfang, and I'm worried that he's probably going to die to stop Sylvanas, but, you know, I will trade Saurfang if we can get rid of Sylvanas. Sorry, Saurfang, as much as I love you, we got to get rid of the cancer in this storyline, man, and it's going to take a death or two to get her out of there, but I love you, dude. You're one of my favorite characters, and, yeah. And then Wrathion, he's also in my top 5. I'm bummed out that he's underutilized and they kind of ruined his purpose, but they can salvage Wrathion if they don't make him a villain. If they make him a villain going forward, he'll go from S to D. He'll go from S tier to D tier. But right now, he's not a villain yet. So he's a better version of what Illidan, like I say in my video about the top 5 characters. He's the better version of what they tried and failed to do with Illidan. So, there we go. That is my character tier list. Let me know what you guys thought. This is all subjective, so, I mean, disagree with me all you want. It's fine. Like, I don't feel bad if you do. These are just feelings and characters that you like or dislike. So, yeah. So, anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I just want to do a little fun, rambly video where I talked about my thoughts about this. Because I posted it on Twitter, and people were like, wow, I didn't expect XYZ to be where they are. And I was like, I was beginning to explain, and I thought I could just make a video on this. If people really wanted to watch my feelings on the whole thing, there you go. So anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay awesome, and yeah, farewell.